welcome to Ecoholics. Today's topic of the day is Rostow's stages of growth. Today we will understand what are these stages of growth, why Rostow has called it as the stages of growth and not a theory of growth, and how did it influence Indian economic development. So let's begin. The very first thing that we learn is about Walt Rostow or W. Rostow, who was an American economist, and also he helped a lot into the planning and development there. Now he said that the stages of growth for any economic development happen in a way that they are in 5 steps. So here you can see that there are 5 stages of growth. Rostow stated that any economy, whether it is any economy of the world, it develops through these 5 stages of growth. Now this was a big statement, correct? Because to say that any economy of the world will have all of these 5 stages in their economic development is a very big statement and a very big commitment. Now we are going to understand how economically it is inclined under this theory. So he has divided his theory into these 5 stages of growth: traditional society, then preconditions for takeoff, then drive to maturity, and then finally high mass consumption. Now interestingly, Rostow's book was called as The Stages of Economic Growth, a non-communist manifesto. Now, if you all remember, Karl Marx had written a very famous publication which was of the name Communist Manifesto, which basically mentioned the ills and the demerits of capitalism and how capitalism creates divide, how capitalism creates vulnerabilities and inequalities. So Rostow wrote a non-communist manifesto as in a counter-attack to the Karl Marx's publication to mention that the stages of growth in an economy through capitalism can actually lead to development. So Rostow was of the view that capitalism can actually lead to growth in the economy, to development in the economy, and it is actually beneficial. So that's why it was a counter-attack and towards Karl Marx's publication. That's why it's called as the Non-Communist Manifesto. Now, what was his aim? To show that all the countries grow in that same way, in the same manner. Now, it's a very standardized thinking or a statement that all economies grow from being a primitive or agrarian economies, then they move towards manufacturing and industrial sector, and then finally the service sector improves. Now, of course, this kind of an economic thought was stated by Rostow because of a belief, because of a certain economic logic, and also the sample countries that he had taken, which were majorly capitalist economies. However, the theory did not take other economies which were third world countries, which were poor, which were underdeveloped at that time. So because of that, this theory does not have full utilization of data, and that's why it has a lot of lacunas also. But we are not going to study lacunas right now. We are going to study about the theory first, and then we look at the merits and demerits of the theory. Now let's begin stage wise. So the very first stage that we have is the stage of traditional society. What do we mean by traditional society? A traditional society is not just financially orthodox or backward, but it is also socially backward. So a traditional society has all the economic activities in a very traditional manner. The agricultural sector is the primary source of income for this particular society, and even the people are engaged majorly in agrarian activities. Also, the agriculture is not very diversified. It does not have an intermixing of industrial sector, and the agriculture sector is also very traditional in terms of utilizing technology. Correct? So that's one thing. Then if I talk about output and productivity, they are low. Why? Because the economy has just started its growth, and that's why utilizing the agriculture sector, utilizing the benefits of that sector, accruing revenue from it is a process, and that's why initially the output and productivity are low. Also, you all know that when more amount of people or labor is engaged more than necessary on a piece of land for agricultural activities, it leads to disguised unemployment. So because of that also the productivity is low. Okay. Then society is hierarchical with limited mobility would mean basically that the society has a very primitive traditional landscape where there are orthodox mindset and lack of awareness about many things of the world. Okay. Then savings and investments are negligible. Now, because initially all economies are closed economies, so we consider that when the productivity is low and when you know that the income can be divided into only two things, consumptions and savings. Now, of course, if the income is low, so automatically the whole concentration will be on consumption. Savings would not be a primary thought for individuals, and because of that savings are low, meaning that investment is also low. So that's how a traditional sector looks like. Okay. Then the next stage is called as preconditions for takeoff. Now, exactly like how an airplane prepares itself for takeoff and what all things happen during the process are exactly replicated in that theory. That's what's called as the preconditions to take off. So now during this stage you will find that growth has spurted, the development has started to happen. There are the development or the growth is happening in bits and pieces in different parts of the country, and so you'll find that new leadership and reform minded people are going to emerge. Government, whether it's government, whether it is non-governmental institutions, there are going to be new leaders who are going to find their own visions so that the economy can develop. Investment rate starts to increase. Now that the growth has set in, now people's income increase and they start to save a bit, and that's why it leads to increase in investments. Around 5 to 10% of national income, we says the investment looks like. Initially, of course, it starts from nearing to 5%. Okay. Infrastructure, basic infrastructure like transport, education, banking starts to develop. So the basic infrastructure for development, or which we also call as the social overheads, like transportation, like education, like health, like medical facilities, the basic infrastructure starts to get developed so that people can now resort to all of these avenues for receiving whatever services they want to receive, right? Industrial entrepreneurs appear setting the foundation for modern growth. This is the time where, some industrialists, leaders, business leaders will emerge, and their legacy will start in the economy. Each and every economy has some or the other, 5, 6 such people who are remembered for eternity. Right? In our nation also, there are such industrialists, business leaders. You tell me in the comment section below, which are those industrial leaders of Indian economy who have stood by their legacy, and the legacy still continues, right? So such industrial entrepreneurs also arise, and they lead the way so that the economy, which was till now very traditional, now would move towards industrialization, right? Now, then we have the third stage, and the third stage is called takeoff. Now we are geared, we have all the required resources, so now we are ready for the takeoff. This is the most crucial stage by Rostow. Why does he call this stage as the most crucial stage? There's only one reason why. Because ultimately, the economy wants to fly. The economy requires its wings to open so that it can fly, meaning that now it can trade. It can set competitive prices in the international market. It can gain foreign exchange. It can stand out in the amongst other countries in the competitive world. That's why takeoff stage is so crucial. So investment exceeds the 10% mark, 10% of GDP. Rapid industrialization begins, which is the key secret of growth in the economy, because under capitalism it is believed that industrialization is the engine of growth, right? So which is why from the same thought Rostow had mentioned that rapid industrialization will lead to great growth in the key sectors, in the key important sectors of the economy, which are going to earn revenue, which are going to earn money for the economy. Agriculture becomes commercialized. Now, of course, agriculture, which was in the first stage very primitive, very traditional, without any technology, now is going to become commercialized, meaning the farmers are no more going to be poor farmers. Now they are going to be earning and trading farmers. These farmers are going to take the agriculture sector much ahead, and now the agriculture sector would look at diversification, would look at better technology, better systems, and meaningful commercial trade. Urbanization accelerates. Now, what does this mean? Urbanization accelerates according to the growth pattern. When the growth happens in bits and pieces in the economy, people rush towards those areas which they seek as a better opportunity, more exposure, more remuneration, more wages. So because of that, migration happens, and because of that, urbanization also exceeds. Growth becomes self-sustaining. This is a very crucial line, because during the takeoff stage, or when the economy achieves that takeoff stage, the economy is considered to have gone towards that path where now growth will reap more growth. Growth will harvest more growth. So now the problems or the bottlenecks are now very reduced, and the economy is now free to experience better growth opportunities. So it's just going to go higher up in the sky. That's what is the takeoff stage. Then next we have the drive to maturity stage. Now this is beyond the takeoff stage. At this stage, the economy becomes diversified and technology advanced. If you all would look at how industrialization happened, industrial revolution happened in the world, okay, with the inventions of steam engine and with the inventions of so many other things around it. If you see the world from that clock, now till 2025, now everyone says that, the AI is going to take over our jobs, the AI is going to take over our employment. But actually it's not true. Every decade or nearing a decade, there is a spurt of new technology, new advancement, because it's life and we require progress. So as a matter of fact, this new technology would harvest more employment opportunities, but different ones. So which is why the world will be with those who has better technological aid. Today, If we talk about India's agriculture sector irrigation system, the drip and sprinkler irrigation system has manifested such nice productivity efficiency of water in India, and many other things. Now, if I talk about agricultural technology, we have derived a lot of agricultural technology from Israel, and Israel has become a hub for so many varieties of agricultural technology. Now, of course, here we say that when countries have some kind of USP, some kind of technological innovation, some invention is happening, the world will be with them. The world will acknowledge that fact, because today, if I talk about AI, artificial intelligence, when is integrated in different systems, their efficiency has just enhanced. It has not deteriorated. So, which is why Rostow had stated it at that time that drive to maturity would mean that the economy would become more diversified, more sectors, new type of employment opportunities, and advancement of technology. Economy would invest heavily in manufacturing and infrastructure. So a new phase will happen over here. The infrastructure will not be the basic infrastructure that we saw in the stage 2. This infrastructure will be very, very efficient, productive, innovative, and according to the international standards. Growth will spread in all regions. Now, till now, we knew that growth is happening in bits and pieces in some smaller parts of the country, but now it will lead, the growth will now trickle down to all the regions. Now, each and every region will start growing, will start nurturing itself. New industries will replace the old ones, and the country would become less dependent on imports, because now economy has invested highly in infrastructure. So obviously manufacturing will be something that will be a game changer for that economy, and the economy will start becoming self-deployed in so many things that the economy can produce itself. So that's why it would be less dependent on imports, right? And finally, Rostow's fifth stage is the age of high mass consumption. Now, what does this mean? So, Rostow suggests that the development would peak when everything is related to consumption. So, when every economy and every individual of the economy will direct itself towards consumption, higher consumption, that will be the peak of this stage of the economic growth. Economy focuses on consumer goods and services, consumer durables. People enjoy higher living standards. Of course, we know that consumption can only happen when the income is high. So when the per capita income becomes higher, people can afford luxury. All people can afford luxury. That's when we can say that people are enjoying higher standard of living. Welfare, health, education expand. Now they just don't exist, but they expand. So you will see a different phase of welfare, different phase of health and education facilities. And the economy shifts from production to consumption driven demand. So it would be a consumption driven demand. So that becomes the peak of the development that Rostow calls as the fifth stage of growth. Now, the question is that do all the economies go through all these same stages of growth? Well, it's a question that usually appears in almost all economic examinations. No, the answer is no. That Rostow has definitely given a very landmark theory, but this theory also has some lacunas which we should look at. So let's look at the merits and demerits of this theory. If we talk about the criticisms, many of the economists suggested that the theory is highly capitalist in nature and does not at all include the third world countries, so-called third world countries, or poor economic countries. Okay, so it's too simplistic and Western centric. Then it ignores problems of development like inequality, like poverty, like unemployment problems, like environment degradation. It completely overlooks that, and it's too straightforward into how the economy can be a consumer driven demand economy, right? Then assumes that all countries follow the same path. So yes, of course, it's wrong. If I talk about India, for example, India was a highly agrarian economy at the very start of its development post independence. However, then when the reforms happened in the economy, the LPG reforms happened in the year 1991, after that, the economy suddenly became service oriented with the boom in IT sector. Till date, we are now focusing on manufacturing sector as we would have done earlier, but the service sector saved the grace because it just boomed, and we set international records, international standards in the service sector. So not every nation follows the same path as mentioned by Rostow. With these criticisms, you should still be aware that Rostow has not given this theory in fluke. It is a well logical theory because it has a lot of modern relevances. It is still useful in analyzing economic conditions, economic transitions, how the development is taking place. It also has a strong foundation for the growth models like the Harrodoma growth model or any other growth model that also believed in capitalism or the capitalistic nature of the economy. Definitely, Rostow's model is a standard foundational model. So, even with criticisms, this model gives us a very visionary idea about how an economy would grow or may grow and peak its growth. So with that thought, that's all for today's lecture, and we are going to meet soon with more such interesting economic concepts. Till then, stay tuned to Ecoholics.